It begins like a story of wealth and success. A man who seemed to have everything: private jets, mansions, political connections, and a lifestyle that only the world's richest could imagine. But beneath the glitter of Jeffrey Epstein's empire was a darkness few dared to question. A darkness built on manipulation, power, and control. Epstein called himself a financier. He managed money for the elite, moved in circles of influence, and cultivated a reputation that made him appear untouchable. But there was one question that followed him for years. Where did his money really come from? No one could clearly explain how he had built his fortune. His wealth seemed to appear out of nowhere, and so did his connections to some of the most powerful people on the planet. For a long time, the charm worked. Epstein's private island in the Caribbean, his Manhattan townhouse, his jet known as the Lolita Express, all became symbols of his mysterious empire. To the outside world, he was successful, brilliant, and respected. But for many young women and girls, he was something else entirely. The story began to unravel in 2005. A mother in Palm Beach, Florida, reported that her 14-year-old daughter had been assaulted by Epstein. Police opened an investigation, and what they found was far worse than anyone expected. More and more victims came forward, each describing the same disturbing pattern. Epstein would lure them in under the guise of offering financial help, modeling opportunities, or education. What followed was abuse, hidden behind the walls of luxury. The Palm Beach police handed over their findings to the FBI. Federal agents uncovered dozens of alleged victims, some as young as 13. But when the case reached prosecutors, the system itself seemed to bend. In 2008, Epstein struck a secret plea deal, negotiated behind closed doors with powerful attorneys and the U.S. Attorney's Office. He served just 13 months in a county jail, allowed to leave during the day to work from his office. The deal granted immunity to his potential co-conspirators, a decision that would haunt the justice system for years. When the agreement became public, it sparked outrage. How could a man accused of trafficking minors walk free after barely a year in custody? For many, it became a symbol of a two-tiered justice system, one for the powerful and one for everyone else. Then, for almost a decade, Epstein lived quietly. His wealth remained, his connections remained. The story faded until 2018, when investigative journalists at the Miami Herald revisited the case. Their report, titled "Perversion of Justice," exposed the full scale of Epstein's crimes and the hidden deal that protected him. The story went viral. The silence was over. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested again, this time on federal charges of sex trafficking minors. The FBI raided his Manhattan mansion, uncovering evidence that included photos, videos, and thousands of documents. The victims, who had waited years for justice, finally believed it had arrived. But the ending was one no one expected. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York. The official cause of death was ruled a suicide, but almost immediately, questions flooded in. How could a man under 24-hour surveillance die unnoticed? Why were the cameras outside his cell malfunctioning at that exact moment? And why had the guards assigned to check on him fallen asleep? Theories spread like wildfire. Some claim it was a cover-up, that Epstein had been silenced to protect the powerful. Others insisted it was suicide, a man cornered by justice with nowhere left to hide. The truth, to this day, remains uncertain in the eyes of the public. In the months that followed, more documents were unsealed, Testimonies, flight logs, and court evidence revealed a network of influence that reached into politics, royalty, and business. But one myth persisted: the so-called Epstein list. Across the internet, people began sharing fabricated lists of names, claiming they were connected to Epstein's crimes. In reality, there is no official Epstein list. Only verified legal documents, released through court orders, contain the true records, and those show connections, not convictions. Many of the names circulated online were false, damaging innocent reputations and obscuring the real story. The voices of the victims among them was Virginia Giuffre, who became one of the most recognized survivors. Her testimony shed light on how Epstein and his close associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, allegedly manipulated and trafficked young women. In 2021, Maxwell herself was convicted on federal charges of sex trafficking and conspiracy. Her trial became a mirror to Epstein's legacy, a reflection of the crimes he never faced in court. The Epstein case raised bigger questions than one man's guilt. It forced society to look at how power operates, how wealth and connections can silence truth, delay justice, and protect predators. The case exposed the cracks in the legal system, the failures of institutions, and the complicity of those who chose to look away. Even years later, the story refuses to fade. Documentaries, investigations, and survivors continue to push for transparency, demanding that every name, every fact, every piece of evidence be brought into the light. Because in the end, this is not just the story of Jeffrey Epstein. It is the story of what happens when privilege becomes armor and justice becomes negotiable. Epstein's death closed a chapter, but not the book. The questions remain: who helped him? Who protected him? And how many more like him still hide behind the illusion of power? The Epstein files remind us that truth has a cost. Sometimes it is paid by the victims who speak, sometimes by the institutions that fail, and sometimes by the silence of those who know too much. In the end, one man's fall exposed a world built on secrets and showed us that even in the darkest corners of privilege, justice can still find a way to break through.